Hi Boris, Bauer here. I just thought I'd take you through what I've done with your hand controller design. First off, before we start, I'd just like to say that I think it probably is printable. In fact, I'm sure it's printable. I don't think there'll be any trouble with that. I did have a bit of a problem with that 3ds file you sent me, since none of my design packages will import that file format. So I downloaded SketchUp and imported it into there, and you can see what I had on the screen here. In order to 3D print something, you have to load the file into what's called a slicer, which is the thing that takes the 3D design and makes... Hang on a second. Right. It takes the 3D design and slices it into horizontal strips that the 3D printer can print. Those slices are generally run off a thing called an STL file, so you need an STL exporter to be able to generate that from any particular design package you use. Now, I know SketchUp doesn't come with one of these exporters by default, but you can find one in the extension library, this extension warehouse. And if you go into that and type STL, you can see there's a thing called there's a variety of importers and exporters, but there's one called SketchUp STL here, which is actually by the people who created SketchUp. Excuse me. So I loaded this extension up, and that gives me, in the File menu, an Export STL option. So I used this Export STL option as this, exporting the whole model. Export it to my Downloads directory, and that gives me an STL file down here. Now, if I go into my slicer program, I use the thing called Slice 3CR, 3R rather. There are a number of slices available for 3D printers, and they typically all do much the same thing. This one's a free one. There's another free one called Cura. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop that in here, and you can see that it's come in, but actually there are holes in the design. Now this is probably a fault with their STL exporter, and it basically will cause the item not to print correctly. There are some third-party repair packages which can repair some of these problems, but I think in this particular case the best thing to do is to actually redesign it in that program that I mentioned, I think called Onshape. And I thought what I'd do is I'd use this video to show you how to do that. It should only take about 10 minutes. And you should find, I think, that Onshape is as easy to use as SketchUp, and is also quite a lot more powerful and more adaptable for 3D printing. So anyway, as I say, unfortunately as it stands, this is not printable because of these holes in the model. But this is that's really a mechanical problem to do with the software rather than anything to do with your design. Okay, so let's get rid of that from there, and let's go. What we're going to do is we'll go back to SketchUp, and we'll take a screenshot of the shape so we can trace it in the new package to make it as easy as possible. So if I go to SketchUp and I choose Camera, Standard Views Top, we actually get a vertical view of this of your controller. So I'm going to use a screenshot program over here, and I'm going to just take a rectangular screenshot around what you've got. Okay. And I'm going to save that out to disk. Okay. In my Downloads directory. The other thing we might want to do is just work out what the scale of this is going to be. So I'm going to use the ruler tool here to go from this point to about here. And I think it's about 142 millimeters long. So we'll use that to scale the picture in the other package. Let's go out of SketchUp now. Now if you go to any web browser and you go to Onshape If you create yourself an account, these accounts are free, and they only charge you if you create private designs, but I don't think you're too worried about whether somebody sees your hand controller design or not. So I'm going to use my existing account, and you'll see here that I've already had a go at your controller, and you can see it turns out quite well, but I thought what I'd do is be quite nice to for you to be able to do this yourself, to be able to use the program in future. So let's go through the steps I did to create this. So we'll create ourselves a new document. And we make it public. Okay, so we're now editing this this model. There are two different types of tab down the bottom here. One is called a part studio, and one is called an assembly. An assembly is typically used when you want to assemble several parts into a whole. For what we're doing here, I think a part studio is fine, so we'll just concentrate on this part studio tab. You can right click on these tabs to rename them, so we could call this controller if we wanted. And this modelling tool is all based around drawing 2D shapes onto planes and then extruding them into 3D. I think it's pretty much the same way SketchUp works, but it's possibly slightly more formalised. There are another variety of parameterizable features, which I'll show you later, which make this actually a really powerful tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to, looking down on the model, we're going to draw onto this top plane, which is actually also the bottom plane. So we're going to draw onto this plane and draw the shape of your controller. So if I select this plane and I then say, oh, first thing that perhaps I should mention is there are two menu bars up here, two types of menu bar. This one here that we're seeing now, before we started drawing anything, is one for manipulating 3D shapes that we've created. In a minute we're going to draw a sketch, what's called a sketch, onto this 2D plane, and you'll see that when we do that, the menu bar changes into a number of 2D drawing tools. So we're going to select a plane on which we want to draw, this top plane. We're going to click Sketch. A new sketch is created. Again, we can call this what we like. We can click this little pen icon here. And this excuse me, this is the base. That's our base sketch tool. Now, so we are now drawing on this base plane here, but we're looking at this in 3D at the moment. So we can either click on this item here to rotate it to the top plane, or we can we can right click and choose View Normal to Sketch Plane, and this will rotate everything so we're looking down onto the plane we're drawing on. Now remember, we may not be drawing always on the top and bottom planes, you might be drawing on angle planes, so this is quite a useful feature. First thing we want to do is we want to import that picture we took of your design. So if we go to this, this drop down here, you can see that one of the things is Insert Image, and we need to import the screenshot we took, this guy here. Okay, so that's imported that. I'm going to choose this as the image I want to insert, and it's asking me to draw an image rectangle, so it's asking me to draw the rectangle in which I want that image to fit. So I'll do that. Let's clear these notifications. Now if you remember, we decided that the length of this was 140 millimeters. So what we can do is we can use a dimensioning tool here to actually set that size to 140 millimeters. So if I pick this dimensioning tool, I can either measure from this point here to this point here, or I can say I want to dimension this line here, this length here. So I'm going to click on that and drag out the dimension and then type in 140. And that's going to rescale the whole object up to that size. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try and recreate the outline of this shape such that we can extrude it into 3D. And I think what we'll do first is we'll create a couple of circles to match these ones down here, because these look like they're circular curves and these are more complex spline curves. So let's zoom in a little bit, and if I take a circle here, you see there's a number of ways of drawing circles. I can choose a center point circle where I pick the center point and the radius, or I can choose this 3-point circle where I pick 3 points on the circle. So let's choose this, and let's pick 3 points on this this circle here. You see that's made that match quite nicely. I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do this arc here. Actually, I can do that with an arc. So there's a 3-point arc as well. Let's do it with a 3-point arc. So let's pick from here, here, and here. Actually, that's giving me the wrong part of the arc, isn't it? So let's delete that. Let's just do that. Let's do that again with the circle. I'll pick the 3-point circle again and pick the 3 points on the circle. Okay. Now don't worry about the fact that these are circles and not arcs yet, because we can fix that a bit later on. Similarly, down here we've got another circle we can use. We've got this one here, here, and here. Okay. Now I'm going to draw a line down between these two circles. So I'm going to pick the line tool, and I'm going to say I want the line to go from here to here. And we've got another circle here, so let's do that one. So this looks like another circle. Remember, we're drawing on the outside of your design rather than anywhere else. So I'm going to do here, here, and here. Okay, so those are all the circle parts. There's another, seems to be another straight line across the top here. So let's draw that in, another line here. So remember, what we're doing now is we're just drawing the outline of your shape. And now I'm going to start drawing a spline, which is going to go around these curves here. So I'm going to start the spline at the end of that line. And I'm going to do it, basically splines, the sharper the curve, the more points you need. So this is quite a shallow curve here. Starts getting a bit, let's just zoom in a bit. You can zoom in with the scroll wheel on the mouse. Now the important thing about this is it's all editable later, so it doesn't matter if you make a bit of a mess of it, because you can go and fix it up later on. Now I'm going to stay clear of this center point here, because you'll see that when you click on things they try to lock to those points, so I'm going to take care not to click on that, otherwise it's going to think I want to lock it to the center point. And when we reach the end of the spline we can press escape. We should have that thing there. So now if I click on this top thing, it'll rescale it to that point there. So now we've got a bunch of intersecting 2D shapes, and we can snip away the bits we want. What we want is a single outline, which goes around which is the outline of the thing. If we just try and save this as is, we won't be able to extrude it because there are too many shapes which cross over. So we can use this pair of scissors here to trim away the bits we don't want. So we click on that tool. We say we don't really want this bit. We don't want this bit, we don't want this bit, we don't want that one, this bit here, that bit there, this bit here, and I think that's probably pretty good, actually. Now remember, we don't need to worry too much about getting it wrong, because we can actually go and pick up these points. If we deselect all the tools here, we can actually start dragging these points around. So if we go and look at this bit here, you see that one's in a bit of a strange place, so we can move that around. Now what that's doing is it's moving the circle we created, the two circles we created. So what we basically need to do is to make sure that these two things are parallel. So you can apply constraints to any object. Well, actually, I think what we want to do is we want to say that this is going to be on a tangent. So this line here is a tangent to this one here. And you'll see that it jigs it all so that this thing becomes now a smooth curve. Once again, I can deselect that and I can start moving these things around. You'll see how things all stretch together to actually keep the thing in shape. So as I say, we can later on go around and tweak this if we don't think it's good enough. If we'd like to make it smoother or whatever. But I think that's probably good enough for now. So we can say OK to this sketch. And we're now back in the 3D tool section. So if I was to actually just rotate this round, you see we've got a 2D sketch. If we pick that sketch here and we use the extrude tool, which is this thing here, I think your thing is extruded up 10 millimeters, I think, if I remember rightly. Sorry. And we need to pick, yeah, it should be right. Yeah, and you see we've now got quite a good representation of your object. Looks a little bit like it needs a bit of a smoothing out here. So let's go back in and edit that original sketch and go and look at this area here and see what we can do to fix that. I think this is because these two things need to be made. This needs to be made tangential to that, like we did before. So we pick the tangent tool. So that needs to be a tangent to this, and not too well, did it? You can always undo things if you think they've gone horribly wrong. Let's just pick that and drag that down. That looks okay. So I'll save that. Yeah, that looks fine. So this is what we've got now, and what we can do with this is we can create a shell. So we've got our 3D object here, which is this item here. That's the sketch we started from, and we've extruded it. So let's start again. That's the sketch we started from, and we've extruded it into this shape here. We can pick the shell tool here, and we can say we want the shell thickness to be something like maybe 1.2 millimeters. We want it to be hollow. Well, actually, let's not click hollow. Let's say we're going to remove the top face. So we click on this area here, and we're going to remove this top face. And you can see this is the shape it's going to give us when we've finished. We say OK. We can now look at that, and that looks pretty cool. Again, there's a little bit of not a great curve up here on this top corner. So let's go back into the base, and we can edit that even after we've created other features that have stemmed from it. So I can go in here and drag. And this point here looks like it's been lined up with this edge here. So let's delete that point there. Okay, now that will allow us to jiggle this around a bit better. I think that was because we put a point and that it locked it to this line. That was the issue with that. So if we now go back out and we look at the whole design, yeah, that looks a bit smoother. So we're doing quite well now. What we need to do now is we need to add in those little posts for the mounting posts. So let's go and create a new sketch based off this plane here, this bottom plane here. The bottom of the thing. And so we're going to draw onto that, and we're going to look at it from the top again. In order to find out where the posts have got to go, I'm going to import that picture again. Again, I'm going to draw the image rectangle. If you remember, it was 140 wide, so let's just make sure it's the same. Using the dimensioning tool, and now we should be able to position that exactly over the top of the previous thing to get the positions of the holes. There we go. So now we've got these these are the mounting points here. So I'm going to use a center point circle now, and I'm going to draw a circle 3mm. I think these are 3mm holes you've got. So I'm typing the size here, and I'm going to do another circle for the outside one, which is 6mm. Yeah, and I'm going to do the same over here. So there's a 3mm circle here, and using the same center point, 6mm circle. Let's go up to this one. 3mm, 6mm, and we can call this sketch mounts, just so we've got some idea, we know what we're talking about. We clear down that sketch, and let's go back to the overall model. What we're going to do is we're going to extrude that sketch out, this one, and we'll use the extrude tool again. We're going to say the depth. So there are different ways of extruding. You can say you want to extrude it to a blind depth, basically to specify what the depth is. But if you remember, we've made this a shell now, so if we extrude this 5mm, it's going to stick slightly over the top of this. So we can actually say we want to extrude this up to a face, and we can choose the face, which is this outer rim of the controller shell. So we'll do that, and we should see that these things pop up to be to the same height as that. If we say OK, you'll see we've pretty much got your controller, and I think that's probably taken us about 10 minutes to build that. But let me show you some other good things we can do with this if you want to. I mean, you don't have to do this, but for example, one of the nice things is you can put fillets in, mainly for strength. Certainly on these posts, they could possibly do with a little bit of strengthening around the base. So we could pick a fillet, and we could say this joint here can be filleted. This has got a 5mm fillet on, which is rather too large, so let's change that to 2mm. And then we can actually add these other faces in. And so you see that's produced quite a nice smooth rounded effect, which will be, it's nice looking, and it's also adds strength. And you might also want to add a fillet all the way around the outside edge here. Oh, I didn't do that quite right. Yeah. So we've got a fillet all the way around the outside edge and on those things, and that looks pretty cool. Now, if I go and export this to an STL file, it's very easy to do. So we click on the there's several ways you can do it. You can click on the part. This is the whole part here. So we might want to rename that to say controller lower. I take it this is the bottom half of the controller, you can either right click on that and say export, or you can go to this tab here and say right click and say export, and choose the format STL. Basically all the default options are pretty good. I'll say OK. And if I now go to my slicer program, which actually sometimes gets a little bit confused, I'll start that again. If I go to my slicer program and I'll drag that STL file into here, you'll see that actually looks a lot better than that previous one. And I can now use that to, it's also showing me it fits on my printer bed, which is this size here. And I can actually now go and try and print that, which I will do. So I'll export the G code. Yep. I'll go into my printing device. So this is the one I'm going to use. This is Harry's printer. My one's here. So I will load that up. Actually, sorry. I need to open the box. Upload that design. And so print. So that's heating it up and starting the print off. Anyway, I'll let you know how that goes. I'll send you. I'll actually send you the final finished object. But I hope that showing you that on-shape stuff gives you an easier way to create things for 3D printing. I'm perfectly happy to 3D print any of this stuff for you if you want to send it to me. The good thing about the on-shape thing is you can just give me a link to the design you've done, and I can access it directly. So you don't need to email me shapes or anything. I can just do them from a link out of on-shape. Anyway, let me know if you managed to recreate that. If you don't, I can send you the one that I did, and I'll also post you the finished part. See you later.